Kim, thanks very, very much, and thank you as well, not only for your service to NACD, but also to your service to FFA. You really have a remarkably great job of working with some of America's greatest young people. And Michael and Jeremy, thank you for the opportunity to visit briefly before this session. I really appreciate the service and attention that you all are providing to the leadership of this incredible organization. And I know, Michael, that your service is not over. We put you on another advisory committee, so thank you for your willingness to step forward. Let me begin first and foremost with a large thank you to everyone who's in this audience. You are at the ground level. You are the folks that people back home trust, appreciate, rely on, and look for advice and counsel and direction and guidance in terms of being able to conserve and preserve our precious natural resources. There are very few people in the country today that have any more important job or responsibility than the jobs that you have in terms of the conservation districts that you work in. And I was struck by the banner that was on the website for NACD. It reads, "Conserving Natural Resources for Our Future." And I think it's interesting because I think you've identified two critical elements in that banner, in that short statement. The notion of conservation and the future. Oftentimes when people think of conservation, they think of the present, taking steps now to make a difference. But you all recognize and appreciate that as we conserve more and better, it guarantees a brighter and better future for folks who farm the land and for folks who live, work, and raise their families in communities rural around the great country of ours. When I came back to this office, I had the opportunity to decorate the office in Washington, D.C. And I'm the first person that's ever come back to this job as Secretary of Agriculture, so I kept some of the things, or brought some of the things back that I had before I was Secretary. A large picture of George Washington Carver speaking to Henry Wallace. Henry Wallace and George Washington Carver have an Iowa connection. Henry Wallace obviously served as Secretary of Agriculture and established the Pioneer Seed Company, which was an important element and remains today an important element of agriculture through Corteva. But I also decided to put pictures on the wall of the Dust Bowl to remind me of the past, of where we were when we weren't paying as much attention as we needed to the condition of our soil and water. A reminder of the important work that USDA has in partnering with you folks and farmers and ranchers and producers all across the United States to create a greater and more significant commitment to conservation. I look at that picture every single day. It's right opposite of my desk. I can't help but see those pictures. And in one of the pictures, there's a struggling farm family trying to deal with the level of dust that has essentially overcome one of their corn cribs. It's a stark reminder of the pivotal time it was back then. And that brings me to my remarks today. This is an extraordinarily transformational and pivotal moment for American agriculture. You know, we just celebrated Abe Lincoln's birthday yesterday. He established the Department of Agriculture in 1862. That was a pivotal moment for American agriculture. The president understood and appreciated that for this country to move forward, we needed a more prosperous agriculture. And so he established a department as a part of the Department of Interior, and he challenged it to create research and to find out how to be more productive and to spread the word through land-grant universities all across this great nation. The Depression was a pivotal moment. Henry Wallace, Secretary of Agriculture, decided to come in with a slightly different way of supporting farmers through basically managing the supply of commodities so that farmers would be guaranteed a decent price. 60 or 70 years later, Secretary Butz became the secretary and suggested that there was time for American agriculture to change, that the world was in need of greater productivity, and the United States needed to essentially lead that effort. And so he encouraged more production. He He eliminated the supply management system and encouraged farmers to plant fence row to fence row. And boy, did American farmers ever produce. In my lifetime, the efficiency of American farmers has increased at least 17-fold. And we have become a major agricultural producer around the world, where 20 to 30% of what we grow and raise is exported around the world to countries in need. But now we reach another interesting point. And I think it came in focus for me when I saw income statistics for this last couple of years. It turns out that the last 2 years are some of, if not the best 2 years in agriculture and farm income in the history of our country. Now, normally, a Secretary of Agriculture would stop right there, take credit for it, and move off the stage. But here's what I found. Our Economic Research Service basically reported that in the past few years, nearly 50% of America's farmers had negative farm income. Another 40% of our farmers made some money, but the majority of money they made didn't come from farming. It came from off-farm income. So in a record year, we had 10% or so of our farmers doing incredibly well, and 90% not as much. So we're at a pivotal moment to ask ourselves, what can we do about that? Now, my predecessor, Secretary Perdue, was quite honest with American agriculture. A number of years ago, he was in Wisconsin, and somebody asked him about this. And he said, well, you know, the economies of scale being what they are in America, you either get big or you go out. And I think that certainly was speaking the truth. But I believe there's a different way. I believe rural America wants and needs a different way. And I believe it's up to us, the Department of Agriculture, conservation districts, and people that are concerned and interested about the future of this country to figure out a different model. To quote Abraham Lincoln, he once noted that the dogmas of the quiet past were not adequate to the stormy present. He said that while the occasion of difficulty is significant, the opportunity is also significant. And as our case is anew, he said, we need to think anew and act anew. So I'm here today to talk to you about what that could look like and the role that you individually can play in creating and charting a new model, a pivotal transformational moment, so that it's not just a few, and God love them for what they do. They do an amazing job. We want to be supportive of them. But we need programs, we need approaches that not just concentrate on the few, but the many and most. Now, how can that be? What can we do? Well, mention was made to climate-smart commodities. And I really appreciate your willingness at NACD to embrace this opportunity, to put forward a proposal, to participate in helping farmers embrace the notion of climate-smart practices, conservation techniques and approaches that can improve soil health, that can improve water quality, that can reduce greenhouse gas emissions, that can increase the carbon and sequestration that occur on the farm, and in doing so can conserve and preserve a brighter and better future for farm families. Those community smart agriculture commodity partnerships are talking about creating a value-added commodity, something that the marketplace places a greater value than just the commodities that are grown today because of the embracing of climate-smart practices. We're linking not just those practices and incentives for farmers to embrace them, but also working with markets to create those incentives as market-based. So that's one new way of expanding how farmers can make money. I mean, today, it's you sell a commodity and you raise it, and you sell it, or you sell livestock on a commodity-based market. It's just basically two ways plus government payments. Well, what about a fourth way, where we essentially establish a value-added proposition through climate-smart practices? What if, as you do that as a farmer and rancher and producer, You're also able to qualify for what are called ecosystem service markets. There are 24 of these markets around the country today. They're water markets, they're biodiversity markets, they're carbon markets. These are going to evolve over time, and they're going to essentially create an opportunity for farmers who embrace climate-smart practices to be able to market the result of that practice to an industry or group that needs that result to offset their own greenhouse gas footprint. This is a tremendous opportunity, especially given the fact that you all are going to help us embrace the notion of monitoring and measuring and verifying the results from climate-smart practices so that we create a better understanding of how to establish those markets. So, climate-smart value-added opportunities, ecosystem service markets. What if, as part of the climate-smart future, we also encourage the conversion of agricultural waste into something more valuable, an ingredient? Let me give you an example. Sustainable aviation fuel. Now, it's interesting. I get electric cars, totally get them. Saw a lot of commercials last night. If anybody watched the game, electric cars. I get it. The charge runs out. You're on the side of the road. You pick up the cell phone, you call, you get a little help, get another charge, off you go. But what if you're in a plane and the battery wears out? And what if you're flying over a lake or an ocean? I mean, the reality is the aviation industry needs sustainable aviation fuel. It needs a biofuel that's bio-based with low carbon. Farmers, ranchers, and forested landowners can help produce the feedstock for that new 36 billion gallon industry. The current biofuel industry employs several 100,000 people all across the Midwest and in other parts of the country. Well, this is an opportunity in an industry that can be in every part of the country, meeting the need of our airline industry and also the international airline industry. Do you know that the Department of Agriculture runs the Bio-Based Preferred Program? It's there that we encourage other federal agencies to purchase bio-based products. We have a catalog. There are 139 categories of bio-based products. Within each category, there are 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 or more products. This is an amazing opportunity for us to not only create new income streams for farmers as they better manage their waste product, but it also creates more jobs, processing jobs, manufacturing jobs in rural places. Well, what about the notion that we expand beyond the current processing capacity in this country that's so concentrated that in many parts of the country still today, producers only have one market. There is no competition for what they do and what they raise. Well, what if we expanded processing capacity? What if we created new independent small and mid-sized processing capacity, creating a different market or a new market, one that doesn't even exist today? That's yet another income stream. So far, we've basically invested in over 300 facilities, either in expanding or building new facilities or allowing them to expand their markets beyond just selling within their home state, but now being able to sell across state lines. And it's an emerging new opportunity, and we're going to have additional support for more processing beyond meat and poultry being announced later this year. So these are examples. There's the local and regional food system example of working closely with local schools, which really allows local schools to have a direct connection with farmers and ranchers and producers in their home area. We put a $10 million grant out for Farm to School. We funded 5,000 schools. That's 5,000 new market opportunities for farmers. The point of this is a pivotal moment, and the resources that we now have under the Commodity Credit Corporation, under the bipartisan infrastructure bill, under the American Rescue Plan, under the Inflation Reduction Act, create enormous potential and energy and momentum to build this different model. Just today at USDA, we're announcing publicly the level of funding coming out of the Inflation Reduction Act for conservation. In 4 programs, we're going to commit in 2023 roughly $850 million. $250 million in EQIP, $250 million in CSP, $250 million in the Regional Conservation Partnership Program, and about $100 million in the easement program. That's an increase. And we're getting all of you and all of us at NRCS prepared for a remarkable increase in that amount next year. It's $850 million this year. It could be as high as $1.7 billion next year. So there's a tremendous opportunity for us to guide those resources to support climate-smart practices, to support those ecosystem service markets, to support the kind of opportunities that can be created in the conversion of agricultural waste, and to support a variety and diversity of crops being grown across America. Those resources are going to be made available, as you well know, to farmers, and we have a huge backlog, as you well know, of unmet conservation needs. We've begun to hire more people in NRCS, but the reality is without you, we can't get it done. There needs to be a strong partnership between us and conservation districts. There needs to be because once again, you're the folks on the ground. You're the folks that can expand. You're the folks that can explain. You're the folks that can guide. You're the trusted source in your communities. Now, for the first time in a long time, you're going to have resources, significant resources. And we're going to want to work with you collaboratively and closely with a variety of partnerships, because this is the moment. This is the moment for folks to understand the power of what you've been advocating for some time, which is conservation. This is the opportunity for us to learn that as you conserve, as you embrace conservation, you don't have to worry about future productivity, because as you do this, you're going to be more productive over time. We know this. The data is pretty clear. You sequester carbon, you replenish that soil, and it will continue to give. So this is a remarkable opportunity for us to work collaboratively. We also know that there's some challenges out there. We know that there are challenges, particularly in the western part of the country, with drought. And I've been out on farms. I've seen the consequences of drought, and not just droughts that last a year or two, but the reality is, you all know, the climate is indeed changing, and these droughts aren't lasting for a year or two, which they were. But we're now talking about droughts that have lasted for a decade or more. Mega droughts, they call them. And so we want to work collaboratively with the Department of Interior as we deal with this issue of water and drought. We want to collaborate with the DOI's Water Smart initiative by putting resources in EQIP behind that effort. So we're announcing an additional $25 million of EQIP resources going into that Water Smart initiative for better water management, better water use. We want to develop better ways to combat and deal with the impact of drought and build greater resilience. We want to complement the work that's being done at the local level and irrigation districts and water suppliers and the work that they're doing. We want to provide additional priority areas where these resources can be invested above and beyond the 37 priority areas that exist today. So increasing EQIP, CSP, regional conservation and easements, putting resources behind a water initiative, developing an opportunity to grow new revenue streams for farmers. It creates this for rural America. It creates an opportunity where many and most farmers can profit with higher farmer income. It improves the quality of soil, which encourages greater productivity in the future, improves the quality of our water, and expands biodiversity, which not only impacts and affects the communities that rely on that water, but it also opens up more and expanded recreational opportunities, which is another driver of the rural economy. It can create greater productivity for American agriculture while also providing greater sustainability and resiliency. And of course, it will also lead to more new and better markets and jobs. Why is that important? And I'll finish with this. It's important because the role that rural America plays, and I realize that there's a lot going on in urban agriculture. I don't mean to slight it. I know you all are involved in that. We have 17 locations now, which is committed to urban agriculture, and we're putting Farm Service Agency offices in those urban centers. NRCS is working in those urban centers to embrace urban agriculture. That's another revenue stream, another new opportunity, whether it's on a rooftop in a brownfield or in a building. You're going to see more of that. But for me, a kid who grew up in the city, moved to a small town, I'm concerned about rural America. And here's why. I've told this story before, and I just think it says everything there needs to say about rural America. Kim mentioned I was governor of Iowa for a few years, and in that capacity, you are in charge of the National Guard of your state. What a wonderful group of men and women, just amazing people. You know, they are our first line of defense in the form of disaster, and they are not hesitant about leaving their families and their communities and going overseas and doing whatever has to be done. And of course, I was governor during the time that we were engaged in Iraq and Afghanistan, so a lot of our folks were over there. And unfortunately, during the time I was governor, 41 of my fellow Iowans didn't come back. It's the job of a governor to reach out to folks and to express condolences and sympathies, to attend funerals or to reach out to family members, to visit with them in the office or give them a call. On one occasion, I had the opportunity to visit with Mrs. Aleva Smith. Her husband, Bruce, was a 20-year veteran of the National Guard. He had done not one, not two, but 3 tours of duty in Iraq. His job was to be a helicopter pilot, and he ferried people from one neighborhood in Iraq and Baghdad to another. Literally, you couldn't drive in those neighborhoods. I went over there to visit our troops. They literally transported us by helicopter. That was Bruce's job. One day, he was ferrying about 17 folks to a different location, and the chopper he was in charge of was hit by a handheld missile. And it was going to go down. And as it was explained to me by the Adjutant General, Bruce had in a split second, he and his co-pilot had in a split second a decision they had to make, which was to the extent they had any maneuverability left in that chopper as it was going down, do they do it in a way that maybe increases their chances of survival or increases the chances of the people in the back surviving? He did what you would expect him to do. He's a guy from a small town of 3,000 folks. He put himself at risk, his co-pilot at risk. He died, his co-pilot died. 17 people lived that day. So I called his wife. You know, folks in my position give a lot of speeches, and most of the time it's not too difficult to get up and say a few words. But there's never, ever, ever a time when you find the right words in a conversation like that. I did my best, talked about thoughts and prayers. And this woman interrupted me halfway through my conversation with her, and she said, "You know, Governor, I got this figured out." And I thought to myself, this woman has just learned within the last 24 hours that her husband of 20 years, they've got 2 small kids, she's got a part-time job, and he's gone. How could she possibly have it figured out? This is what she said to me. She said, "The way I have it figured, those 17 people needed Bruce more in that split second than I'll need him the rest of my life." Here's why what we're talking about is important. Because it's people like that who live in rural America. It's people like that who understand and appreciate that the country we live in is not something we should take for granted. It's not something that we just ought to think, well, you know, no big deal. I live in America. No, you live in the greatest country in the world. You live in a country that honors freedom and liberty, that continually tries to perfect itself, has all the faults of the world, but it continues to work hard to try to correct them. You live in that country. And there are people willing and able to put themselves at risk to protect that. That's Bruce. There are also people back home, when sons and daughters and moms and dads and grandparents and grandmoms leave for service, that have to pick up the pieces, have to keep the home going, have to keep the business going, have to keep the farm going. And they understand that it's their job, because this great country requires sacrifice. They know that in order to protect this country, they have to give. And where did they learn that? They learned it from the farming community. They learned it from people who understand conservation, which is a pretty simple proposition that the land gives to you, but you got to give something back to it or it will stop giving to you. And that fundamental value is what's alive and well in these rural communities, dependent on farm income, dependent on more than 10% of them doing well, dependent on those jobs that can be created, depending on folks working at the grassroots level to make sure that people are investing in conservation, depending on you. So the future of this country, the value system that's part of the glue of this country, is dependent on all of you and dependent on all of us. So I hope you will join me in helping to carve and to pave a new direction for American agriculture that basically opens up whole new vistas of opportunity, that creates more jobs, greater commitment to sustainability, and that we do it understanding that at the end of the day, it's not just about that individual farmer, it's not just about that acre of land, but it is about our great country and making sure that what it represents can continue to be the greatest nation on earth. Thank you very much.